Okay. Can you tell that we're live on my page?
Hasn't popped up yet. There we go.
All right, we are live now. Okay. So everybody, welcome to another episode of Hollywood Kitchen. I am really excited about this one today. We are going to talk all about the life, the career, and the food of silent screen vamp Theda Bara. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I hear it's pronounced many different ways. And I'm so grateful today to have Angie Schneider. You will probably remember her if you watch Hollywood Kitchen from as my Mary Pickford expert as well. And she is fantastic. And we're going to talk about her expertise and her Theda Bara collection. And we have Joan Craig, who personally knew Theda Bara and wrote an entire book, Theda Bara, My Mentor, about their lifelong friendship. So ladies, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. And Joan, it is a treat because certainly it's one thing to be a collector, but it's another to have known her and known her life. And
it makes it come alive, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does.
Yes. And one of the good things too about this episode is we don't need a stove. Honestly, that's kind of been a major part of the reason I've selected the stars and the recipes I have for the past few episodes is that very reason. And we're going to talk about Theda Bara because some of you may not know who she is, and we are going to do a deep dive for those who don't know. But she was really the first vamp and femme fatale of the movies. And she started as Carmen, as Cleopatra. And unfortunately, a 1937 vault fire destroyed almost her entire film career. And it's very sad and heartbreaking for those of us who study this stuff when there's not much to study. But she's very iconic. And many of you, even if you've never seen her work, you probably know the racy imagery of her with the skeleton or her doing like this in the Cleopatra wear. So we're going to talk all about that. And she's really fascinating. So I'm very excited to delve into this.
Well, and that's kind of how I got into, to Theda is the fact that you're right. There's only really 4 movies that even exist, due to the fire. And of course, nitrate films over time, it times on our side with a lot of these movies. So it's hard to get to know her as an actress, but you do. I mean, her photos are everywhere and you really get to know her through her image and what she stood for. And she really was kind of the earliest of a studio produced actress too.
Absolutely.
They created an image around her. And I think that really makes her stand out to me, that she was kind of that first to have a story built into, not just the actress.
And it's a wild story at that. So we are going to talk all about that. But first, we definitely want to get the food taken care of first, because for me, that's always the thing of, oh, can I pull this off? Can I do this? Which I'm not really worried about today's as much as I was the mousse I made a few weeks ago. But the recipe that we found today is from Photoplay magazine in 1916. And it's called the Theda Bara sandwich. And they did a whole spread about different sandwiches that were attributed to different silent actresses at the time. And I'm going to kind of read what Photoplay magazine says because I love the vernacular. The way they wrote is awesome. But after I read it, we're going to talk to Joan about the changes because Joan actually had Theda make this sandwich for her. And we're going to compare the Photoplay version versus what Joan actually received and ate courtesy of Theda. So there's probably a difference there too.
Probably.
Is that right, Joan? There's a difference?
A slightly different. It's all the same ingredients, but it's how you put it together.
All right.
That's the importance.
Okay. Well, we're going to start. Angie graciously printed me out a copy of the Photoplay article. All right. Theda Bara's sandwich suggests something spicy and peppery when you think of Theda Bara, doesn't it? For she is the world-renowned vampire, and that type of person always suggests those very things. Likewise, the Theda Bara sandwiches are of a peppery nature, the kind that bites a little more and says more. The ingredients that we are going to need today: slices of toast, which we have some slices of toast right here. minced ham. Now, Angie, you are hardcore. You got the real thing, right?
And we'll have Joan explain the type of ham that Theda
Yeah.
actually used, but
We're going to show you the kind of ham because we are so dedicated to authenticity.
It's the devil's ham, of course.
Yeah.
The
The
devil.
devil's ham with the devil on it. Mayonnaise dressing, sliced pimento, some sliced pimento,
Yes,
and sliced sweet pickles. There are sweet pickles
Yes.
right there. Okay. Now the directions in photo play say one of the slices of toast, you put a layer of the minced ham on this. On this is sprinkled a little mayonnaise dressing. I don't know how you sprinkle mayonnaise dressing. That doesn't really make sense to me, but okay.
it's more like little dots.
Dots. Oh, okay. Then you put a few of the pimentos on this, enough to suit your taste, and then some more mayonnaise. And then put a few pieces of pickle on all of this. Another piece of toast, and the sandwich is made. Serve warm. Now, Joan, tell us the way she actually did this. Like, take us step by step through how Theda made you the sandwich.
Well, she created the toast out of Wonder Bread, which was made in Beverly
Which
Hills.
we have. Angie saw to it. We have Wonder Bread.
Marvelous.
Okay.
Yes, that was the bread that was used at the time.
Okay.
And so that was the toast, and she spread thinly the ham spread on there. And then she would place the little dabs of mayonnaise and put the pimento strip, and then put some sliced sweet pickle.
Okay, so let me get the ham spread out of the can here. Phrases I never thought I'd use, but there we
and
are.
we do have Theda Cat in here, so she might hear this ham can and come running.
Angie has a black cat named Theda Bara. During rehearsal, Theda Bara got the best of me, and I currently bear the scars, the marks of Theda Bara. I don't know if you can see them, but they are on my left hand here. So, okay, so we've got the ham that we put on the sandwich. Okay.
Pimentos on.
Her black cat was named Putty.
Oh, Putty, that was it.
Okay, now Angie's putting the pimentos on the sandwich. Okay, do we spread them around, or do we kind of just
I spread.
let's spread them around a little bit?
Add some color too, it makes it pretty.
Yeah, so this is what it looks like at this point.
That's right.
Okay.
Some of our sweet pickles.
Okay,
Oh, and mayonnaise too.
we've got sliced sweet pickles. Okay, did she put them in a certain way or fashion layout?
Well, yes, she put the little dabs, the pimento and the pickles were the last we put on.
Okay, so we have the pickles, and then we have the pimento, the ham, the dabs of mayonnaise. Okay,
And you
And
just put
then-
it together and cut it in quarters.
Cut it in quarters.
Yes.
we're about to go flying off.
That's
Okay, so
And you said you cut it at an angle, like
I
that.
cut it in a diagonal and then into another quarter.
Some pickles that you gotta cut through.
those pickles are hungry.
Now, she would always have this on the table for every buffet with her parties. That was part of what was always served. She'd have sometimes a dish that was on tiers, and that would be on the buffet table.
On the goofy table, you said?
Buffet.
Oh, buffet.
Buffet.
That's you said a goofy table.
Okay, and here is what the final product looks like.
Yes. Perfect.
So you approve, Joan?
I approve.
Okay, well, that is a big deal. So our deep dive into Theda. Angie, how did you first learn about Theda Bara? What was your first exposure to her?
My first exposure would have been her through photographs. You know, being that we love ravens, we love crows, we love kind of the darker aesthetic. You know, as soon as we started seeing images of Theda, we were just drawn to her. Honestly, that's how most people are introduced to her. And then you're like, who is this woman? And when you start researching it, really finding out the impact too she had on the film industry, like you said, being that marketed vamp and kind of typecast, and it really was kind of an interesting story of Theda.
Yeah, and she was born, Joan, back me up on all this if I get anything wrong. She was born Theodosia Goodman, right? A nice Jewish
Yes.
girl in
Ohio.
Ohio.
Yes.
She wanted to be an actress, and she did stage for
Mhm.
quite a while.
Yeah, and one of her mentors, which is another thing I loved about her, because I'm a big fan of Sarah Bernhardt, and she was
Oh, Sarah Bernhardt was quite a character. Yes, and she was greatly admired by Theda Bara.
because didn't even Theda go up to Milwaukee, Wisconsin for a while too, right?
Yes, yes, it's a Slits theater. Theda was met her there at that time because she made an appearance.
And I think, yeah, that just, because that's always what's even today with contemporary actresses is how one influenced the next. So you have
Yes.
the answer earlier, Sarah Bernhardt, who influenced Theda Bara, who then influenced, the next.
It was unusual because Theda was able to get a private meeting with her.
Oh, wow, how did that come about, Joan?
I don't recall exactly, but it was something that was a little bit unusual. And so that introduction was because Theda, I think, was staying at the hotel that she was at.
Okay. Well, she worked on the stage, but it wasn't until she made her first film that she really broke through, right? Because A Fool There Was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was a best-selling book.
Right.
And when they went to cast the movie, they decided instead of a famous actress that was already a known quantity, they would put an unknown in the role and kind of, as Angie said, manufacture a star.
Well,
Like,
and
from
back
scratch.
then, that's what a lot of these directors and producers were doing is they were taking either books or stage shows, because especially the stage shows was more for the wealthy and the rich. So they would take these stories, and that's what they would look at creating films for the middle class and the immigrants and such. So she did get her start on the East Coast too with William Fox, who then manufactured who Theda's that we know are today.
And they had some publicity people who were basically giving P.T. Barnum a run for his money. Like when they put, again, correct me if I get it wrong, but when they put her in A Fool There Was, right, they decided to give her the stage name of Theda Bara.
Yeah.
Which she was going by Theodosia. What was the last name that she changed from Goodman to?
Chipper is also
Okay. And then the rumor was that Theda Bara was an anagram for Arab death. And that she was born under the shadow of the Sphinx in Egypt. And they created this backstory that was
even Bara spelled backwards is Arab.
And they created this just outrageous like origin story for a girl from, Ohio. And I think from the beginning, though, people kind of knew it wasn't really true.
Yeah, it wasn't true, but yet early on, even, and again, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but Theda as a child wanted that dark image. She was a light-haired, almost blonde girl her mom had wrote an article once from Mother Pauline about in one of the photo plays that Theda would go to bed at night and dream that she would wake up with dark hair and dark eyes. That was her, I think, from the beginning, is what she dreamed of, was that beautiful, dark woman.
She was a born goth.
His mother had a shop, and she made wigs, and Theda would go work with her mother sometimes in this shop, and Theda was interested in doing the makeups, because people would come in there and they'd be going to masquerade parties, and both men and women at that time wore wigs. Men wore wigs as well, and oftentimes they would go there because Theda would fix them up so that nobody could recognize who they were. And so I think that was the beginning of where Theda had all this imagination of being something else and creating it an unusual image.
And A Fool There Was a tremendous box office hit, and it kind of captured lightning in a bottle in terms of the whole vampire trend, which we could discuss that for hours, but the whole concept of a woman kind of being this predatory creature on men and sapping them of their vitality and bringing about their destruction, which I don't think they had the phrase femme fatale at that time, but that's kind of what that was.
Yeah, they
And
weren't sucking the blood, they were sucking the life out of the men.
yeah, and the vamp became such a cultural phenomenon that there were a lot of other actresses who were kind of stepping up to that plate. And there were so many, we were talking earlier about how it was in pop culture. There was Theda Bara sheet music, and there was so much kind of like in the later 20s, it was it. That was the big focus. Well, in the teens, the vamp.
Yeah.
And what that basically entailed. And I think, I'm sorry, go ahead, Joan.
Well, she was so good at it that people just believed everything that they read about her, when absolutely she was not that at all. She was a very quiet woman at home. You know, she I don't think was ever the so-called vamp herself. It was all an image that she created, but she was so good at it.
Yeah.
I think a lot
And
of
so-
stars have had that problem, because I've read quotes about people saying Rita Hayworth was absolutely nothing like Gilda. But when you watch Gilda, you just assume that that star is that person. And it's kind of hard to separate the image from the real human being.
Especially
Yes.
if they married me because they thought I was Gilda, not Rita, you know. And
Exactly. So Joan, Theda Bara went on to star in a string of films, including Carmen, Cleopatra, a ton of movies. They made them so quickly back then. It kind of blows my mind. I think at one point she made like 10 films in 1 year. So that had to have been just really insane. And but as often comes up when talking about stars from the era, she was typecast.
Right.
Like, for example, if she tried to do anything outside of the vamp, much like Mary Pickford with the little girl, people just kind of didn't want it.
they wanted them to go back to what they.
Go back to their lane, as it were.
And then she had a few other counterparts. You had Velasquez Surratt, you had Louise Blum. So there were several others now, like Velasquez, a lot of them were through William Fox, you know, Fox Studios. But then you did have Louise Blum that was competing with the other studios that were trying to make their versions of the Theda and the vamp. So she really did open her doors for several actresses to kind of play in that role.
And
She
what
did
always-
quite a few things on stage. The Blue Flame
yeah,
was quite an exotic play, because the story, people thought that there was something wrong with it, because as far as the ending was concerned, but it was designed to be that way.
I had
It gave such bad reviews that everybody wanted to see it.
and it's kind of almost hard to quantify how famous and what a phenomenon she was. Like, I don't even know that there's anybody in our world today that I could compare it to, you know, for other people.
Yeah.
Because she really kind of was. I mean, yes, there were other vamps, but I think Theda definitely was very singular, you know?
Now, Joan, one thing you mentioned to me when we were talking the other day that I thought was fascinating is, like you said, not only that the studios helped create Theda's image, but she was creating her own image as well. And you said when she was working at the wig shop, she did the makeup. Now, she also made her own makeup, correct?
Oh yes, she made all her life. She made her own makeup, and sometimes when I'd go into the house, she'd be in the kitchen and she'd be very busy had a big pot, like a witch's pot, and she's making something for her makeup.
Now, Joan, can you take us back and tell us in the audience how you met Theda Bara and how your incredible friendship with her kind of got started?
My parents had just moved to Beverly Hills, and we were renting a house at 729 North Alpine Drive, which was the first house. And my nanny was walk me to school. I was starting out in kindergarten over there at Hawthorne, and so I had to cross the street in front of Theda Bara's house, and it just so happened that Charles Braven was on the front lawn, and he was trimming Theda's roses in the garden there. So he asked me where I was going, and I said I was going to school, and he said, well, I have something for you, and will you please take this rose to your teacher? So that was the beginning. And then the second time that I passed by, when I'll now call him Uncle Charlie, he said, the lady of the house would like to meet you. So then an appointment was set up, and my nanny took me to the front door and left me at the front door and said, I'll be back for you in an hour. And then the door opened and Uncle Charlie, he opened it up. And then that's when I went into the house and first met Theda. Of course, she was interested always in the exotic things. So she had a crystal ball and she sat me down, and immediately the first thing she says, I want to see who you are. So she had lifted this little purple veil off the crystal ball, and she says, just a moment, please. I'm looking at what your future is, and just exactly, I want to know who you are. So tell me your name. So that was the very beginning. And she says, well, I really can't tell you what the crystal ball says, because but I can tell you who's in thy crystal ball, and that's my dog. She'd lost her dog that she loved, and so that was the spirit in the crystal ball. So that was my first day meeting. And of course, I absolutely loved this. I mean, so I sort of became this little person that would appear there almost every day, because my parents happened to move right across the street. So all I had to do was cross the street, go. I had an open invitation through their back door and through their kitchen.
Well, even we have some red roses out here too, because he said that, you know, they had the rose bushes at the house, and he said the roses were her favorite. So we have some roses out here too for her.
So you would just go completely to her house every day and spend time with her, Joan, right?
Oh, yes, because my parents were not home in the daytime. I was there with my grandmother, and I was more interested in Theda and Uncle Charlie. I mean, because they would play with me. I mean, Theda got down on the floor and she would go through all sorts of ballet exercises and all kinds of things that we would do. And so it's basically, she taught me how she moved, you know, everything that you saw in the films, she at one point would teach me. The house itself was extraordinary. I mean, she had many pieces from the movies that she made. So there was a skeleton that was always sitting in a chair somewhere. Sometimes.
Yes.
And we're both wearing skeletons. We didn't even call each other today.
We didn't call each other. I showed up at Angie's and she has on a skull sweater and I have on a skull dress, and I'm like, great minds think alike. So
sometimes the skeleton would be in the bathroom and you'd have to move him away.
I love her so much. So let me ask you this: Theda made you after school snacks?
Oh yes. So usually she would have her deviled eggs and watercress sandwiches from her garden. You know, those are little roll-ups that with watercress and butter. Very simple. And the ham sandwich that you had there, that was enough. Pretty much that I would have.
And we have Theda Bara the cat right here with us.
I was invited to have dinner with she and Uncle Charlie and her mother. I think it was about like once a month or something, you know, maybe twice a month. But when I would have dinner with them, we had to speak Latin, no English at all. No other language whatsoever was spoken at the table other than Latin. That was the request of Theda Bara's mother, because that's how she raised Theda. Theda spoke at least seven languages.
Wow.
Fluently.
So she was amazing.
And her mother did not recognize English as being proper to her. She was from Switzerland. And so she declined to speak English.
Well, let me ask you this. So when you went to Theda's house, you mentioned that she made her own makeup. Did she teach you how to do makeup?
She tried to teach me a little, but I was really a little bit I was too young to understand about the makeup. And so I don't have any of the recipes that she used, other than I know that she used, I remember black onyx, she'd make that into a paint. She explained to me that Revlon, the mascara was her, she had the patent on that. And on the old uh, little brushes for the brush that you'd use for mascara, you'd see Bara on the label. So she had a revenue all during her life from that patent.
You said it was Revlon, and did she do, you said Max Factor as well? She worked
And Max Factor as well.
in Maybelline too, or was it just Revlon?
Well, it was Maybelline. It was Maybelline, yeah.
So
Yeah,
you-
then I think
there's a
Revlon.
modern company called Besame, and they take a lot of the vintage makeup and they've recreated it, but this is the same concept of what she did. Is you'd have that block and you would dab it with water and you'd moisten it, you'd have the little, like a little hairbrush.
Yes.
Did she ever teach you how to apply makeup? Like the way she did with the incredible eye makeup?
She would put my makeup on, and I would do little plays at my church, and she was very interested in going to church with me, and she would put my makeup on. She'd make my costumes as well.
And you were talking before we got on camera, you were talking about how Theda made all of her own clothes and she didn't just go to a store and buy them. So tell us more about that.
No, I don't believe she ever bought anything off the rack, so to speak, for herself. No, she was always, she would design and make her clothes. She would lay out everything on the dining room table and then cut it there, and then she had a mannequin there and she would put it all together, and then we'd take it to the dressmaker and then she'd put it together. But she designed everything that she wore pretty much.
So she speaks 7 languages. She makes and designs all of her own clothing. She makes her own makeup and gets patents. I mean, this is a multifaceted Renaissance woman.
Oh, yes. Yeah, she was raised that way and also very frugal as well.
Now, did you watch any movies with her? Did she show you any of her movies and kind of
Oh,
talk through them?
yes, because her husband was also in the film business. He was the director for Ben-Hur, the first Ben-Hur. And so I did see all of her, I saw most of her films. The unfortunate experience was that they would bring these films up from the basement, and then they had the old projector and they would be projecting the film, and all of a sudden there would be bingo, a big black spot, the film would burn. And so she became very upset with that. And then it seemed that someone had advised her that these films could be transferred to another media. So all the films that they did have in their cellar, they sent off to this place that was going to transfer the film, and that failed. And then there was nothing left.
Oh.
You see, she was confident that, because they had a basement full of these films, that they had at least one copy, but they all powdered over the period of time.
And for those watching who may not know, films were shot on nitrate, back then nitrate film stock, and it would turn to jello, it would turn to powder, highly combustible substance. And about, I think it's 80 to 90% of all films made in the silent era are no longer with us. So it kind of drives me nuts if I think about all the treasures that we're not ever going to see because they don't exist anymore. And I just burn the eternal candle of hope that somehow in some archive in some far-flung corner of the world,
There's a movie with the wrong name.
there's a
title
movie
on it
with
or
the wrong
something.
name, or Beyond the Rocks with
Right.
Valentino and Gloria Swanson. I mean, I didn't think I'd ever get to see that. And they found it, I believe, in the Netherlands, and now it's been restored. It's available.
I
So
think Lon Chaney's Unknown, the reason they didn't know that print existed was because someone wrote unknown on it. So somebody thought they didn't know what the movie was, but it was the title.
yeah, so these things occasionally do happen. So I try to burn the candle of eternal hope that somehow, somewhere, someday in our lifetime, these things will be rediscovered. And which brings us to Cleopatra's probably one of her most famous and iconic films, which kills me, it's lost. But there is a man who did a reconstruction using still photographs. And I was lucky enough to see that at the Hollywood Heritage Museum. And basically, once you watch it long enough, you kind of forget that you're watching still photographs. Eventually, your eye just kind of forgets, I guess. And can you tell us what you thought about seeing
and
that?
we're fortunate because Theda was very involved in her films. That the photographer on set took photos of everything, whether it was there's some amazing behind the scenes photos that exist. There's photos from almost every scene from the movie, and what they would do is they would write the production number and the still number on the bottom of these photos, and then you can match where they would lay out the film, and then being able to get a hold of the script, you're able to match those numbers, be able to put it all together. So that may be the closest we got, but it does have every costume she wore. I mean, she had so many different costumes that you can then put to which scene it was in the movie.
That film was filmed on Balboa Island, and Theda and Charles took me down to Balboa Island, and we went through the steps and they told me the story that was filmed at the location. So we walked Balboa Island, and it was explained to me at that time, there wasn't any housing. It was just a sand dune pretty much at the time when they filmed it. And we also, there was some people that lived down there that had been involved with the creation of that film. And that was a very exciting moment because she told me the story. And, then there was interesting ones when she'd like to, go off reading and float in the back bay there, reading a book.
Now, did Theda ever tell you any of her favorite movies? Was there one that was the most important to her or meant the most?
No, but one of her favorite stars was Mae Murray. Mae Murray was quite a character with her, the bow lips that she
These
had.
stone lips.
She liked all of the movie stars pretty much. She was very much interested. So many of them came to the house, the directors, the producers, the cameramen, Charles Lawton. They're just, it was just filled with movie people at all times, and every party I was invited to. And one of the times that she had a party, she wore her her peacock costume, that was made with peacock feathers. And so it was planned for her to make a grand entrance, and I was to carry the long train of the peacock feathers when she made her grand entrance to her guests.
Well, she was quite the socialite. What did you say? I mean, she would go to the Brown Derby. I mean, she was kind of everywhere in Beverly Hills, wasn't she?
Oh, yes. Yes, she was.
Because I noticed some silent stars, when their careers ended, some of them would find other meaningful work or interests in their lives. And then there were others who, it's like it just broke their hearts, and they didn't have, like Mae Murray, they just didn't have kind of anything else. And then they wound up dying very young and or wind in horrendous poverty and horrible circumstances. So what do you think Theda kind of drove Theda after her film career ended? Like, what kind of made her get out of bed in the morning and kind of filled her days up?
She was always busy with something with the industry. When Elizabeth Taylor's films were being made, Elizabeth Taylor was often at the house, And I remember particularly one of the films, I don't remember what the name of it was, but it was filmed actually in the my All Saints Church in Beverly Hills, and Theda Bara was right over there with me, and she would be working on her costumes or, you know, making comments. She was always involved.
Wow.
How did she meet her husband, Charles Graben? Can you talk a little bit about him, how they met, and what their life was like?
I think they met when she was making a film in New York. And Uncle Charlie, he was married at the time, but it was love at first sight for both of them. And his Uncle Charlie's first wife, she didn't like anything to do with the film industry at all. She didn't approve of it at all, and she was interested in animals, and she was interested in the minks. They had a cottage up in Canada, or it wasn't Canada, Nova Scotia, and so his first wife liked living there and rescuing the minks and having a little farm for them and keeping them alive. So that marriage didn't work, and but they remained close friends all the time, and they would go and visit and up there. And so as Uncle Charlie would say, he actually kind of had two wives. But Theda was the love of his life.
I mean, they were married for quite some time after that. So, but Charles kept making movies for some time after that, though, didn't he? Even though Theda's career was done, he still did some work in the film industry.
Uncle Charlie did
Yeah.
many films.
Yeah.
Yeah, he made. I gave a list of all of his films there. So yeah, he was not liked as well, I think, as some other producers and directors, but he made very good films. Dracula. I mean, you think of all of those characters were originally his.
Is up your alley.
Definitely. And so they had a very long marriage, and apparently a happy life, correct? I mean, they seem to have had a pretty well adjusted.
That's what I loved going over there about, because you could feel this love always between. They called each other Moody. and
Oh, you
and
like a niece.
and he was very tall, very long legs, and she would always make a remark because she said, "Oh, he can cross this room in 3 steps."
Yeah, now
And-
they didn't have children, so do you think they kind of took you? I mean, did they ever want children, or was it just they enjoyed having the local child in the neighborhood to?
They wanted to adopt me. Yes, definitely. And I was ready to move in, and I told them that I could move in there, and then I could go and get my meal across the street.
To swap the home?
I would have been real tempted to move in as well and become their adopted.
Yeah, yeah. No, they were interested in all of my welfare. She went to my school performances, and she was always in the audience, and so she was right there like a mother.
Oh, that is so cool. I can't even wrap my head around having Theda Bara like with a crystal ball and a skeleton and you're a kid. It's almost more than my head can like process how cool that is.
And now you said the neighborhood, though, they didn't like having her live in the neighborhood, though, correct? Because of her image?
Oh yeah, nobody. No, I mean, people do not want to be photographed with Theda Bara because of her image. So they felt that, I mean, that was a no-no. And so it seemed to be pretty much, as far as children in Hollywood anyways, is to no photographs of children of famous people. Fred Astaire's daughter, Ava, she was one of my best friends, but even to have Ava's photograph in the school yearbook was not desired.
Yeah.
I think it was more of a being protective at that time. Nunnally Johnson's daughter, Christy Johnson, he was the one that was foremost in promoting Marilyn Monroe, and not many times that Marilyn Monroe was at the house when I'd go over there to play. So you could see the difference of Theda Bara and Marilyn Monroe.
Okay, yet another thing I cannot get my head wrapped around. So let me get this right. You go across the street, and not only is the world's first official vamp in residence, you've got Marilyn.
Yes,
I mean, mind blown right here. Like, what was that like? What kind of conversations did you overhear? I mean,
well, we heard a lot of conversations, and sometimes Christy and I would go with her father to Hollywood party with Marilyn Monroe. So, his wife didn't want to go to those parties, so she stayed home. So that's why we sort of tagged along to protect him. And it was an interesting time. Of course, our opinion, Christy's and mine, when she first was in the lobby of their house, she was standing right in the middle, and we looked at this figure, and of course we're sort of at that awkward 11 years old, 12 age, and we kind of, as they were talking, walked slowly all the way around her and looking up and saying, is that what we have to look like?
well, I think it's so interesting what Andrew was talking about, how everything in Hollywood or in life maybe is built on something else. And so if anyone could relate to what it's like to be a phenomenon, to be a bombshell, to be a object of desire, to be a lightning rod for people's opinions, be it good or bad, I think Theda could understand what Marilyn was going through.
Right.
Like, because there's not a lot of people that are at the center of a global phenomenon. I mean, that's probably got to be kind of rare.
Well,
You
and Theda, you said too, I mean, she was well known worldwide because she even went to England with you. She took you. Now, did everybody know who she was when you guys would travel internationally?
Oh, yes, very much so. Yes, she was greeted royally in England.
So you went to,
We stayed at the hotel there, and we went. I went with her to the coronation, and then we were invited to the coronation dinner, and Theda and Charles and myself. It was quite an interesting time.
it's got to be so hard to even, again, my head cannot process all of this. So what year did you go to the coronation? Do you remember what year that was?
I think that wasn't, the coronation was 1953.
So not too. So she
That
died
was-
just a few years after that then. So it was
Right.
she sick at the time, or when did
No,
she?
no, she was fine. Her illness came on rather suddenly,
Yeah.
and but no, she was fine at that time, and she had many celebrity people that would come and visit her at home. We'd have private dinner parties. I was included, invited into everything as if I was their own child, and that was fairly easy because all I had to do was cross the street.
Yeah, maybe.
It's so, I just cannot even, I just.
My parents had, around the corner was Jack Benny's script writer, and he used to come over to our house often. So they had a lot of comedians too that were in the neighborhood, and sometimes they would go to Theda Bara's parties as well.
And you said you were friends, or Theda was friends with Marion Davies too at the end of her life, right? Was it Marion Davies?
Oh, Marion Davies was
Um,
fabulous. She was a fabulous personality, and she was so funny. She was absolutely hilarious, and I had the opportunity to travel to Marion Davies' different homes, the residences up in Northern California, up in the redwoods there. They had a beautiful place, a cottage place that was outstanding. And then after the coronation, we were invited to go and stay at Marion Davies' castle in Wales.
It's like just when I think your life could not get more astoundingly awesome, it does.
And she's had tea with Mary Pickford at Pig Fairs.
I'm just gonna go lay down on.
Well, it was, I was sort of used to going to a lot of the filmings of the different films. Liza Minnelli's was a friend as well, and they would include me going, over to see the reruns often of Judy Garland's films. And so I would, and the Astairs, they would run films at their house. Pandro Berman was a producer, and they were he would run films there. So it was kind of like living in a world where it was just customary. When I went to as being at that kind of stage at 11, where I was always, kids are always giggling or laughing about something. And when I saw these people that were coming to the coronation and the coronation dinner, they came in their costumes from their country. And I looked at those, and I was just sitting on a chair watching everyone, and I could hardly keep my laughter, because I was used to seeing, costumes in the studios, but these were most unusual.
And so she did do costume parties, so even at her house. And,
Oh yes,
any
yes.
costumes that you remember? I know you said she wore the peacock dress. Anything else that you remember that she would?
Well, I don't remember her dressing in any other costume other than that. They did, they had many objects from the different films that she made present there, tapestries and lots of things that came from the sets. The Joan of Arc, the film, Joan of Arc was being the last film that Theda Bara and Uncle Charlie were involved with the makings of that film. And
We had to take a second to deal with the light and also the kitty. So we're back.
We'll swap again.
Okay, we'll swap again. Okay, sorry about that.
Perfect. Okay. Well, musical chairs. We have a kitty wandering around. I don't want her to knock over the computer.
Yeah, we're worried about the computer being knocked over by Theda Bara and the cat. So you were invited to Marion Davies Castle in Wales after attending the coronation of the Queen of England.
yes, and then we went to Lismore Castle in Ireland, which was occupied by Fred Astaire's sister Adele, who was married to the resident owner of Lismore, and so, we stayed there. Theda Bara at the coronation dinner had made an open invitation for the guests that there to come to a luncheon at Lismore Castle, because many of them were traveling. So there was about, maybe 50, 60 people that arrived at Lismore Castle for Theda Bara's luncheon there. And that was at the time she injured her leg, because just prior to the luncheon, she'd gone to kiss the Blarney Stone, and she kind of had it twisted, and she injured her leg at that time.
Now,
But
talk about a little bit the end of her life then. So she was still very close to her sister Lori, and she was very close to her mother, Pauline, still up to the end of her life. Kind of get into that part of, now she had cancer, and then basically, because then I kind of want to get into the fact of the stuff that she left you, because then we could show some of these items. Kind of talk about the end of her life a little bit and how.
Well, it was a very difficult scenario for the family there. because basically, well, uh, uh, my mother and myself really were the closest people to them, and they needed help. Lori at that time was in the beginnings of developing Alzheimer, and Theda's mother, she just declined, would not speak English or anything. She just could not live without Theda. It seems I wound up with my mother doing all of their burials and taking care of everything that to their wishes for them. And then Uncle Charles Braben, he moved, they sold the house in Beverly Hills, and he moved to an apartment down in Santa Monica where he could walk to little restaurants, etc. But he didn't have a really desire to live. So he passed away not too long afterwards.
So
I buried them all, so to speak. We put together the funerals, etc. You know, everything that went along with that.
That was a very great act of love for you to help them and take care of them, because it's sometimes people can be friends with someone when times are good and things are great, but when illness or tragedy happen, that's really, you know, where your friends are or who your friends are when they stand by you through things like that.
Theda had left me her apartment in New York City. And at that particular time, when I became of age, 2021, thereabouts, it was offered there for me to own it and to live in it. But it was a 4-story building in New York City, in a very, very nice area, but it still was old, and it did not have air conditioning, and it had only about 4 floors and 4 residences, so to speak. So you owned about a half a floor or 4. And I decided that this was not for me, and I wasn't ready to live in New York by myself, so to speak. And I offered it to the residences to share the ownership of that particular apartment. They kept it just completely the same all the way up through the 1970s. And they never, Theda had kept it as she had in her early days in New York, with all of her leopards and skins and things like that.
Now, the costumes and the pieces that she left you, did she kind of teach you all the stories about all the pieces? Now, it was kind of like a trunk that she had a lot of her costumes in from the movies, right? Or how did she keep her costumes from her silent movie days?
She didn't really teach me, other than because I remember seeing them in the different films that I saw of hers. But of course, it was even limited on seeing only certain scenes, and I could not see some other scenes, so to speak. So she educated me by taking me to where the films were made. And I don't recall whether, I don't think she showed me which costume went with each film. But I did learn about the films by her. She and Charlie would reenact a scene for me at a location.
Now, how does she store all of her?
Her presence is being felt in this room right now.
I'm sure. They had a large basement in their house. It was a single-story house, but they had a very large basement. So they kept all of those things down there. In fact, most all of these still shots they had in the basement. I mean, I can remember them being brought up, tons and tons of items being brought up from the basement. They had so much that was too much for anyone to keep, and keep track of.
And how did you decide what to keep after Theda passed away and you got quite a bit of her collection? How did you decide what to keep? Was it stuff that she ear tagged for you? What was the story there?
Well, I packed everything in boxes, and my life took me many, many places. So I pretty well was moving many, many times. So these things never got unpacked. I just would move the box and keep it next to my bed. I always had her boxes next to my bed for some reason. I don't know, but she was always next to me.
Is that presence?
It's always, they were always in my bedroom. So I never really opened the box because I felt, well, that would make them might do something to them. So I just kept them boxed up.
Well, the photo that Theta Cat keeps going after is probably a good reminder of her. So the photo that Theta wants to show right now is her later on, and that's her at her Beverly Hills home.
Yes. Yes, that's taken in her solarium. They had a beautiful solarium, garden solarium in the back of the house.
Yeah, and this is always one of my favorite photos, and this is just a really gorgeous, very oversized. Hard to see. She did an inscription that slowly faded, but it's sent by John Easton, the photographer, and he actually signed it, which usually Easton, he didn't sign a lot of his photos, but he signed this one to Theda, and then she must have given it to a friend because it's got a lovely inscription on there too.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my
She's
favorites.
typing on your typewriter.
Oh, I got
Sorry.
I put the can of ham up there.
The canned ham is causing a little bit of chaos around here. So,
She's like, I smell ham.
oh my gosh.
That's funny.
So Angie has an incredible collection of Theda Bara memorabilia, some of which is going to be sent after this episode to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London for an exhibition. So
I'm very
so
excited about that.
to do this.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of the pieces came from you, you know, and I mean, a lot of the photos too, like this is always one of my favorite ones with her and the raven.
Yes.
A lot of these came from her own photo album. Some of these smaller, 5x7 photos was an actual photo album she had. So she kept quite a few photos, didn't she?
Yes, and Beverly Stout, who put the photos in my book, she has a marvelous collection of Theda Bara's photos, a very large collection, which helped me put that book together because I didn't have very many photos of Theda. I still may have a couple of them, but not
You were
many.
telling us that you don't have a photo of you with Theda. Can you kind of talk about that and why that is the case?
Well, it goes back to I was not allowed to sign my name being at the funeral of Theda Bara over at Beverly Hills. And I was not allowed to have a photograph with her, basically because of her being a vamp.
And did wives probably didn't let their husbands take photos with her either.
Oh, no.
This was one of my very first photos I ever got of her. So it's similar to the one I just showed. It's a larger one, but this one is signed to director Rex Ingram, and she had the most lovely, lovely handwriting.
Oh, she did. And, she, during the First World War, she had many, many followers, and she would write to all of the officers that would send her letters. She would correspond to them. Anyone who wrote to her, she would respond right back, and she couldn't wait to go to the mailbox to see for her fan mail.
And there's an example of her writing a whole note with her stationery.
Yes, I have quite a few notes from her.
And this one she signed right on the back too. So you got Charles' last name on there as well, which is adorable. Now the funny thing with this letter is it was sent to a department store. See if I can read it quickly. It's not the clearest. It was the LS something company, but she had bought an album, and when the album arrived, all the vinyl records in it were broken. So she wanted it replaced. So it's kind of a cute letter. Yeah, she had the most beautiful handwriting.
Can we see some more stills out of your book there, Angie?
Yeah, so maybe.
That looks really cool.
We'll start with this still because this is what people would like to see. So this is one of her iconic images from Cleopatra with the headpiece.
Yes.
And the bras. And then as well as this one from Cleopatra wearing the same costume, just a side shot. And that one came from her scrapbook as well.
I love that one.
This stuff is sexy even by today's
I know,
standards.
But what I
mean,
like about it is, you notice her hair, she's got it kind of like in a bun with the crown. So I tried to recreate it with some of Joan's pieces.
Well, yes. Theda was marvelous with thinking about what a picture should look like to give the meaning of that picture. When you look at it, it is the vamp. And it's just not a photograph of her. When it radiates an image,
Right.
and which is so unusual. You don't see that with other photographs of other movie stars.
Yeah, so we're fortunate because, I was able to get quite a few pieces, but, a good friend, colleague, author, historian, all the word, Tracy Gotzel, she got a lot of the jewelry, so she was nice enough to loan us. So this really is the first time so many of these pieces.
Can we show people this from the front? Because I want people to see the detail in the serpent.
Yes, that's fabulous.
And then you would have had the pyramids.
I remember playing with that, so to speak. So I remember it very well.
You played with it?
Wow.
Oh, yes.
And I look, did Theda design her costumes? Did she work on that aspect?
Oh, yes, very much. Yes.
These are earrings, by the way, very big, long earrings.
Yeah,
very dramatic.
Off the crown, so they would have hung right off of that.
She'd have someone make things the way that she wanted it. She would describe it. She could picture because she studied the old images.
Well, she used Adolphe failed to make the jewelry, and then Claire West, who had done Intolerance prior to that, and she brought Claire West, I believe, in to do the Cleopatra costumes. But she even went to the Met Gala to look at their Egyptian exhibit. Yeah,
Right.
This is pre-Deco Egyptian, so they would have found a tomb yet of
King Tut.
King Tut.
That would be in 1922.
Right, so she was still ahead of her time with that. So that's the one piece I know everybody loves, and it's very iconic. The other one Tracy loaned us for today too is, let's see, I brought.
Again, a major shout out to Tracy Gossel. By the way, she was my guest on the Douglas Fairbanks Lemon Pie episode of Hollywood Kitchen.
And in that same photo, so there's the breastplate.
Oh, yes, yeah.
You can see the purple stone right there in the middle of the
I think I had that one, yeah.
That had to have been very uncomfortable to wear that.
Oh, I used to try these things on.
And then the other iconic jewelry piece from Cleopatra is this necklace.
Yes, I love that one. Mm-hmm. I remember that one well.
Did you wear this one too? Did you ever play?
Oh, yes.
And then some other little pieces I've gotten from you over time. So there's even a little brooch or a little flower chain. I'm sure a lot of these we don't quite know what movies some of these probably were from, but and
sadly that's hard to do now.
I know. Some of her pearl necklaces.
Yes, she and I think Uncle Charlie, they went to the very first Academy Awards dinner. There's a photograph that floats around. It shows a maze of people, but they were in attendance at the first Academy Awards.
Let's see what other.
So you've got a ton of incredible photographs here.
I know. I'm just trying to.
You
One
do.
I wanted to show off was but I like to find Cleopatra still. Let's see, this is a recent one I just got. The nice, beautiful double weight, and this is gonna be our Christmas card.
I love that. That's my favorite.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, that one we just added not very long ago.
Do you think maybe she posed as Mary with baby Jesus to kind of offset the vamp image? Because I do notice sometimes these actresses would do publicity photos that kind of showed the opposite of the image they were known for. So do you think that was an attempt to do that?
I think that was a part in the film.
Okay.
It's something, I think that's something from one of her movies that she did.
Okay.
She
Well, that's an
could have.
side of her then, They're very interesting.
Oh, this I love. So this came from one of her personal scrapbooks too. but it's not of her, it's of a vamp fan club of all these little girls getting together.
Oh, I
would
haven't
so
seen
have
that
been
one.
in that.
And they even put baby vamp dolls. So there's all the little girls that were dressed up just like Theda Bara.
Oh, my goodness.
So at some point they must have sent them to her and she hung on to them.
Oh my gosh.
So that's
She,
the
she
show.
was always performing as a child, you know, she was set at a stage. And in the old days, they had they didn't have movies, so to speak, but what they would have is creating a, say, a famous painting, and you go there and sit there, and the people that were creating the painting were alive and real. And Theda liked to go to those. She'd sneak out of the house and go.
Joan, what was your sister's name? Because this one's signed to your sister. Is it Carrie Craig?
I wouldn't be, he said she signed that to me. What does it say on there? I have a half sister. She gave some of the costumes to my half sister Connie.
Oh, Connie, that's what it says. So it says to Connie Craig on there.
Oh, okay, that's my half sister.
That's your half sister. Yeah, I got your little authenticity sheet with that. The photo I'm looking for. Let's see if I can find it. This one. Well, this one's Salome, but Salome, same thing. They did so many wonderful, beautiful stills, and that one's stamped.
It just kills me. I can't see this. Oh, if I keep thinking about it, I'm just gonna get so upset. But it's just amazing to think about what was made and now what was lost.
Now, before Theda moved to Beverly Hills, she had a beautiful home in West Adams, which Arbuckle later owned. And this is a photo of Theda laying on her couch at her West Adams.
Oh, that's
The
marvelous.
house is still
It
standing.
is. It's part of the campus.
The story about the West Adams house is, and she, after she moved in, she decided to invite the neighbors to a party. So she had set it up for maybe over 100 people, tables out there. And she had a beautiful white dog. And she waited and waited for the guests arrived, and they never arrived. So she was not welcomed into the neighborhood at all in that house. And someone poisoned her dog. That's why she had the spirit in the crystal ball, because she thinks about that dog.
Oh my gosh. There's another one with her and the raven sitting. She did
Oh,
several
yes.
portraits. It's one of my favorites.
The raven.
I love, she's glamour and goth, which are two things that I love.
Yes.
Oh, very ahead of her time. Because I didn't
So
think they
ahead of
used
her
goth at that time. You know, it was even a known fashion term.
Yes. I just am so enchanted with these. I got to show these to the camera again. These baby vamps.
At the castle in Wales, Theda Bara and myself, we performed a exorcism for the ghosts in the castle.
So let me get this straight. Just when I think your life could not be more amazing, you've just done it again. So, okay, so you performed an exorcism of ghosts in a castle with Theda Bara.
With Theda Bara, yes.
I'm officially dead. I can't handle this. So,
And that's what I think of
Amazing.
with her doing a
oh, look at this photo. Wow. And these are original photos Angie has too. So this is like the real thing.
But some of them are fun. I'm trying to find one, like sometimes even the Cleopatra stills, they'll stamp them and say 20,000 horses were used, and you know, they had a
Wow.
budget of this amount. So.
Well, you're doing that. Could I show off some of the
Yes,
photos in this
please.
binder? We can kind of tag team the memorabilia display here.
Absolutely. And you can show the pennants too, which I know you
Oh,
love
the
those.
pennants. Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. They made some felt pennants for silent film stars back in the day. I love these. They're so cute. And a lot of them are on eBay. You can find. This is one for silent vamp Valeska Surratt, also a Fox star who would have been one of Theda's contemporaries. And here's the Theda one, which is the coolest thing I've ever had in my hand right
I
now.
love that.
And I love the color is still so vibrant, and these are just so incredibly cool. And it's such a unique souvenir. You don't see studios making souvenirs of their stars like this anymore.
There's a great photo of her with her little white dog in the car. I don't know if you can see that, but
She never drove a car.
she's as happy as can be in that photo.
Oh, wow.
She never drove. She did not drive.
Wow. Well, in this album, I'm going to do this while Angie's going through this stuff. This is a Hal Roach still, because believe it or not, Theda did do a little comedy too. And this is Madame Mystery. And this is a still from this Pathé comedy right here.
Yes.
And then
That's marvelous.
here's another. This is like a lobby card? Lobby card.
The other one was a trimmed lobby card.
Oh, a trim lobby card. Okay, Madame Mystery. This is, would you call this a window card?
Yeah, it was like a mini window card.
It's a mini window card right here. Again, this is original Theda Bara and Cleopatra. And again, you can see the breastplate, which we have just taken a look at.
Aren't they wonderful?
Oh, wow. It's just amazing.
I mean, when you start looking at it, it really becomes alive to you.
It does. And this is a still, I wonder, Angie, what is the story on this? Because it looks like Theda.
So that is from the theater show. That's from her play that she did.
Okay.
So that's a stage show there.
Okay. Theda on horseback in the film Her Greatest Love.
She was quite a horsewoman.
Oh,
Yes,
wow.
and
Really? Did she have?
she did her own stunts in the films. Some of them were quite dangerous that she did.
Sheet music at Theda.
Wow, Theda Bara, I'll keep away from you. So see, you can see the man, he looks like he's terrified of the vamp. He's sidestepping it here. Oh gosh, this is a gorgeous photo. This is Valeska Surratt. And sadly, I don't think any of Valeska's film.
So all same thing. They went up in the 37 fire. That's amazing.
The colors from this magazine are so vibrant and so beautiful. It is unbelievable to think this is over 100 years old.
And then here's another one from Picture Play too. Oops.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the colors, you can see it better. But yeah, her image is just amazing.
Yeah, I love that one.
Still so resonant and powerful today. I mean, the image has lost none of its ability to really.
So here's an example of the Cleopatra still. And then on the back is this huge stamp. And they really go into detail about how it was filmed in California for a cost of $500,000 with 15,000 people, 2,000 horses. Cleopatra to be shown in America in October and Europe starting in January. Whether or not those details are true, but they made a whole stamp that one on all their Cleopatra stills. But then we'll kind of leave that into the costume behind us for this poster here. In the 60s, a lot of silent actors kind of got a little bit of a reboost. Valentino, Theda Bara, and they made these posters that were psychedelic almost. And they would, people would have these hanging in their bedroom. In fact, I had this at the Hollywood Heritage Museum a couple months ago, and older lady came in and says, "Oh, thank you for having that. I actually had that on my wall when I was a young kid in the 60s, So here's people even that.
I love this one. And that's, I love the costume too.
Yeah, and it's racy, even today.
Racy.
Even 2022 standards, this is a racy
stuff.
Yeah,
so in the 60s, she even had that research.
And speaking of racy, let's show this and let's show the real thing. The real
costume.
Should I move the chair out of the way?
Yeah, we could just slide the dress form up a little closer, probably. Yes. And sorry, we picked the most narrow part of my office because my 3-sheet poster of Theda's in that one.
We can move the computer up in a minute to I'd love for people to get a close-up look at this if that is possible. So feel free to have the computer.
That was in my collection. I tried to preserve that.
You did a wonderful job.
And look at the detail on this. It is very intricate. It's heavy too. These beads weigh quite a lot. And this is the piece. This is going to Victoria and Albert in London shortly after this episode.
Lovely.
And then the back is adorable too, because it just has like a little simple, and I think when I look at photos from the movie, there's probably one more strap that probably had since broken off because I mean these are so fragile, but it's all pearls along the back. So that you remember that, Joan? All these
I
pieces
do.
coming back together.
Yes.
And Angie, do you want to walk the computer up so
Sure.
we can show the movie posters as well?
So then right behind Carrie, then we have a 3-sheet poster of Theta. So I get to have my own supersized Theda Bara in my office.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And that's from the re-release of Two Orphans. And it's interesting, a lot of her images were reused in different movies. So sometimes you'll see this image for a different movie poster. I always wondered with some of these re-released movies at this time if it was due to like the Spanish flu, maybe a lot of these that came out in 1918 seem to have been re-released. And then there's a half sheet for The Rose of Blood.
I want to see a movie called The Rose of Blood. How incredible is that?
With the pretty roses on it, and there she is holding a red rose with those pearls.
Oh, yes.
All right, sorry, everybody, we'll get you a little sick here.
No, it's okay. It had to be done. We're working in a
You
tight
have a
space.
wonderful
So
collection there.
this was unavoidable. Hang on, we're getting the computer back here.
And then I'll show a few of the pieces of the wigs too, since you brought up that her mother was the wig maker. Because you did have some wigs that you kept, or hair pieces.
See, and that was made by her mother.
And then more
All the wigs sit there and the wig pieces, if you have them, they were all made by Theda's mother.
so it all stayed in the family, or some little ringlets.
Uh-huh. They're beautiful.
Did you ever play with her hair pieces? Did you ever put any of them on?
Oh, yes, yes.
So
I know,
Jill, I can ask you this. When you look back on your time with Theda and your relationship and your bond with her, what is the main takeaway? Like, what is the life lesson or the main, like, I don't know, conclusion that you come to that you got from that relationship? If that makes sense.
Well, she left me with a note for me to always be myself, and for me not to try to be someone else, but to always be myself. That was her legacy and her last words to me. But she was very positive, and the things that she taught me, which I probably would never have learned from, say, my own family, was to go out there and look at other people's expressions and try to understand what their lives are about and what they're thinking. And so I used to ride the bus around downtown Beverly Hills and back up. Nobody knew I disappeared, but I would be on a bus and I'd sit there and I'd look at the faces on the of people on the bus and try to think what Theda saw in those faces. So your imagination expands because you start thinking about lives, people's lives. And that makes your life a lot more interesting. I mean, you're not dwelling on yourself, you're thinking about what is going on around you.
Let's look at the questions that are coming in on Facebook here.
Everybody loves the sandwich idea.
Yes.
Let's see, Danny Miller, once she got her new name, did the studio try to disappear her past? One question we got, Joan, and maybe you'll agree with me, is once she had her new name, Theda Bara, did the studios try to remove her old name, Goodman? Did they try to erase that? Did she ever call herself by her original last name once you knew her? Or did she cancel her Ohio life and forget about it?
The whole family adopted the last name of Bara and got rid of the name of Goodman. So
Legally, they all.
she also had a brother named Mark. And so he was Mark Bara, and Laurie was Laurie Bara. Laurie was actually born Esther Goodman. And, it was, Esther, her sister, was born when Theda Bara, for her bar mitzvah, was going to do this performance. And she was wearing an authentic costume. And she was told that she could not wear that costume. And with that, it upset Theda and her mother, I guess at the time, and her mother went into labor and gave birth to Laurie or Esther.
So, yeah, I mean, there's some questions, not really questions, but statements wondering about her homes. It's her Beverly Hills home still standing, which is, it does. It doesn't look, I don't know about the inside, but when you go past it, not much has changed.
The exterior looks like it's all the same. It
Yeah.
probably pretty much is the same. It had beautiful wood paneling inside. It had tapestries. It had suits of armor. It had beautiful pieces of ivory, jade, uh, Buddhas, snakes.
That's right.
Little stuffed snakes that we should use. All kinds of things in there.
Now, I wish I knew where her stuffed snakes went.
Right?
Under skeleton
Right?
and crystal ball. And then of course, plus Adam's home is still there. And last time I went past too, I don't think much has changed on that. And the school there, the campus takes a very good job taking care of it.
You know, I think the houses right there on the corner are probably pretty much still the same. I think the house that I lived in is probably still the same. But when I go past there, it brings back these wonderful memories and all of the people. Clark Gable used to come there quite often, and the cast for Judy Garland's films, for The Wizard of Oz, they came to those parties. So it was a mastership of mixing people together, which they love to do, is to bring.
But it's interesting, you brought up Marilyn Monroe before, and a few comments is some people's first introduction to Theda was actually when Marilyn Monroe did the photo shoot where she dressed up like Theda Bara and Cleopatra. She did that series. She did Clara Bow. She
Jean
did
Harlow.
Jean Harlow. She
Yeah.
did Theda Bara. There was that photo series she did, and that was some people's first even look into that.
And the thing about Marilyn is, I think she is the gateway drug for a lot of people into film history because she's so iconic.
Yeah.
And it seems that Marilyn had such an innate appreciation of the women who came before her.
Yeah.
And Clara Bow even said, I feel bad for Marilyn. I understand how Marilyn felt because being a sex symbol is a heavy road to bear. So I think she felt a deep connection and empathy with all of the women who were her predecessors. Sure.
Someone mentioned about doing a biopic on Theda Bara, but wasn't she even involved with possibly doing a movie about herself before she passed away? Was it Claudette Colbert? I'm trying to remember. I thought she had somebody pinned that she wanted to play her.
Yes, they were going to make a movie, and I was going to play the child, to be Theda as the child.
Oh, wow.
But that all fell apart. Everything seemed to fall apart for her in her later years. It was just very, very sad.
Thing, and you remember her saying that, where she was afraid she'd be forgotten. Yeah, that was a fear of hers. Today, we're certainly not letting that happen.
She can rest assured that there is no way she is forgotten. There's no way at all.
Now, did you see Cleopatra? Did you get a chance to watch that?
Oh, yes, I did see it. I still have a memory of seeing that film, and I also have the memory of it, catching fire, and then they had to, take it all apart, etc., and stop the film. But I do remember different parts that she played in there. I was not allowed to see all of the scenes, so they would tell me, you have to leave the room now, and then you can come back and I can see this.
Adorable.
Wow.
Good.
Well, I think that's about it for the questions. But that said, Angie, Joan, and I, if you post questions on my Facebook page, I'm sure later we'd be happy to scroll through and
definitely get Joan's book. And a lot of people are mentioning right now that they're probably going to be getting. Where can they get your book? Is it still on Amazon, or what are some of the spots that you can get it?
You can get it online anywhere. You just put the name of the book in there, Theda Bara, My Mentor.
Excellent.
Yes.
It is on
It's
Amazon.
still up there. Yeah, yes. You could also get it from the publisher, which is McFarland, is the publisher.
And call Larry Edmonds in Hollywood before you order it on Amazon, because they are our friends and we love them so.
Yes.
So if there's any way Larry Edmonds can provide this book first and foremost,
Go
do
there.
that. Do that first. If that is not an option, then go to Amazon second.
And then the dishes, you have some of her dishes. So
Oh, the dishes are sitting right here.
since we're
Yes,
cooking.
this,
Yes.
I mean, if you can think of Clark Gable sitting, eating off of these plates. Well,
I swear my jaw's been on the floor like most of this
I know.
episode. I'm just sitting here like,
So also Disney Studios was thought of and brought to pass at Theda's house as a child. She invited all the neighborhood in from the house, and Roy Disney came over with the designs of starting a street out in Orange County, and thinking that this was the beginning of the Disney, and so he wanted to know if anyone would drive out there and go to this park. So people would look at the drawings, and they would say, yes, I would, no, I wouldn't, etc. So that's how they did a tally as to whether there was any interest in this park. So meanwhile, I had a lady there that was a friend of my family, was Mary Bellman. She was a very, very wealthy woman. And she was sitting and watching the people, saying whether they would go or not. And so the next morning, she asked if she could go up to Disney's house, and she would like to talk to him. So he was trying to raise money to start Disneyland. And so she underwrote the first year of the development of Disneyland. She backed it, and she made one requirement, was that he had to open 1 year from the date that they signed the agreement, and that was it. And if he didn't complete it by that time, then the deal was off.
So hold your
So-
dishes up a
hold the
little
dishes
higher.
so we can see.
Meh?
Oh, hold your dishes up. We didn't get to see the dishes.
Oh, the dishes.
There they are.
Yeah, show them to the camera so we can kind of see some detail there.
So those are Theda's personal dish set that she would have cooked these ham sandwiches on.
Excellent.
This is called Tischenware,
T-shirt.
and this is bone china, and it's called handmade Tischenware.
And you think she was also involved with creating the colors and the patterns on it too?
That she was involved with creating the colors, the color choices. That's what she told me, whether it's true or not, but that's what she told me.
Well, based on everything else you told me about her making makeup, I mean, she sounds like a very artistic, innovative person who, that makes sense that she would have been involved in that. You have any
Well,
words?
she was very innovative in many, many ways, and so very often she would be on sets behind the scenes, and they both had a very good eye for if a prop was missing. They kept their eyes on what was being filmed, because I remember sitting next to them while they would be doing this on the sides of scenes. So they were always involved with the business in some way or other.
But yeah, I think, if she's kind of your new kind of gateway to the vamp world, there's lots of little clips. There's still a few seconds of Cleopatra that's out there that lives on YouTube. There's a documentary.
Theda Bara, the woman with the hungry eyes, my friend Hugh Monroe Neely, shout out to him. He made this film in 2006 and it never got distribution, which is so annoying. But the whole thing is on YouTube, and I'm going to post a link about that very shortly.
And then Abe Golden also wrote a very good comprehensive book called The Vamp about Theda as well. So there's plenty of great resources.
Yeah.
Check out YouTube because there's little clips. There's still 4 movies that you can still watch and at least see. Man, Mystery's a fun one. You could see her with very early Oliver Hardy in that one. So there's definitely some great ones that still.
Fool There Was is on
Well, there
DVD.
was, yeah, exactly. But so yeah, hopefully it's just kind of gives you that introduction into Theda a little bit more.
Well, Angie, I think we should taste test the Theda Bara sandwich here. So I think that we need to.
Not bad.
All right. So, Joan, you have been lovely. Thank you so much for sharing your extraordinary, absolutely fascinating life with us. And I hope book sales will see a sharp spike for you because it deserves to happen. Angie, thank you so much for being my friend and for inviting me into your home this time. We don't have to do it over Zoom. And thank you for sharing your extraordinary, beautiful Theda Bara treasures with me and for helping
Thank you,
me.
Tracy, too, to help share the jewelry.
Tracy
portions of it.
Goss. This is a team effort, Hollywood Kitchen. There is
We
no
wanted to
doubt.
make sure Theda was very successful.
That's right. So thank you
Thank
to
you.
every. And also,
Thank you
I
for having me.
pardon.
Thank you for having me. It's just been a very exciting moment.
And I do have a Patreon account, so if anybody does want to sign up, all the money from that goes into buying supplies, buying ingredients, keeping these episodes going. And I'm just so grateful to everybody. So stay tuned for more food, fun, and film history from Hollywood Kitchen.
Bye, Joan. We'll be in touch.